So we are almost live. For those of y'all just joining in, our icebreaker question for the chat today is, who would you want to meet, either dead or alive, in the chat? For a dinner party in the chat. Feel free to let us know. I see a lot of creative answers from anime to real life people, people from books, maybe anyone from games as well. Awesome, cool. Well, we're super excited to have our buddies over at Pinterest Design on with us today about talking about panel about, so you're a designer, now what? Talking about what you like, so you first landed your design job and now what could you work on? And so we're trying to offer more perspectives from fellow product, UX researchers and content designers at Pinterest. So for those of buddies thinking about what career path they want to go to, our panelists will be sharing some wonderful insights with you today. And thank you so much, Amy, for organizing this and making all this happen. And also David, our friendly moderator from Design Buddies, helping us today with our event. And so I'm going to share my screen to briefly talk about Design Buddies in case this is like y'all's first time at a Design Buddies event. And also feel free to get your own Design Buddies Zoom backgrounds as David dropped in the chat. But Design Buddies is a global design community. I haven't updated these numbers, but I originally founded Design Buddies in April of 2020 because I felt like a fellow small potato in design, lost in my career after nearing graduation time at school. So founded Design Buddies, and today we've grown a lot and host a lot of panels like this, a lot of events, a lot of workshops for all of y'all to help you level up your design career and connect with other friendly designers. And feel free to connect with us on any of our social media platforms. And just so for some really quick house rules, events are recorded, and by attending you grant consent. If you don't wish to be anywhere in this recording, we are live streaming on YouTube as well, and that's where we'll also be monitoring the chat. Feel free to engage in the chat. It's open for all of y'all to comment on, chat with each other on, connect with each other. But we encourage y'all to keep your own promotional links in our networking sheet and connecting with each other on the networking sheet as well. You can even send each other a personalized invite saying that y'all met at this event. And we also have Slido. I recompiled a list of a lot of great questions that y'all submitted on Luma. But if any more questions come up, feel free to submit on Slido and upvote each other's questions. And we also like to take group selfies at the end. So feel free to think about what object you want to bring. Sometimes we have people bring their pets on, their plants on for our friendly group photo. And you're also welcome to use any Zoom backgrounds from Design Buddies, use them at work, use them at Design Buddies events. Share takeaways on social media, tag Design Buddies, tag Pinterest Design, tag our panelists. And just hop into Discord, continue conversation afterwards, and have fun, be respectful, and thank you so much. With that, I'll pass it on to Amy.
Yeah, thanks so much for an amazing introduction, Grace. So my name is Amy. I'm a product design apprentice at Pinterest. And we, the panel here today, are the product designers, content designers, and researchers who are designing the home of inspiration. So you can keep in touch with us on Twitter and our design blog. Both those links will be in the chat, as well as, all the speakers here today as well. So super excited to be here and chat with y'all.
Awesome, thank you so much. And with that, we'll hop into introductions. So this is our first question. I will be posting these questions in the chat as well and going at the order of who I see on the screen. So our first one is, how did you get to where you are today? And feel free to share any fun facts about yourself. And I'll nominate John first, since you're the first on my screen.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm a research manager on the advertiser experience. My background is actually in sciences. So I did that pivot into multimedia system design, worked at a number of different companies, design agencies, Microsoft and Google, and just happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. Feel free to popcorn to anyone else.
Let's go to Hannah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm a design lead at Pinterest. I've been at the company for a good amount of time, a little over 8 years. And I honestly kind of wandered my way into design. I had a class in high school, but then I tried a whole bunch of different types of internships, from HR to PR to marketing. And then I ultimately ended up at Pinterest, but I started out in customer service and I moved my way into design. And it's been a great journey since. I'm going to popcorn to Ellen.
Hi, I'm Alan. I'm the designer on formats and creator monetization. And my background is actually from architecture. So shout out to all the other architects in the chat. Some fun facts about me. I actually found my very first UI design job off Craigslist. Felt very shady, but it was great. I actually learned a lot on the job. And later on, I started working at Apple and Wish, and now I'm Pinterest. I will pop over to Michael.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael. I'm a user researcher for business activation and advertiser growth. I studied animation and I became a UX designer for 3 years, designing in a small startup and then Ford Motor Company. And then I transitioned to research. I worked in Instagram and now I'm in Pinterest. I'm gonna popcorn to Amy.
Thanks, Michael. I'm Amy. I'm a product design apprentice at Pinterest. And I pivoted to design fairly recently, only about a year ago, from the music industry, actually. So kind of similar to Hannah, I had a bit of a convoluted path in finding my way to design. Worked in a few different verticals across the music industry, mostly focused in live events and managing artists directly. But yeah, super happy to have it all come together in design, and yeah, for the opportunity to work at Pinterest, which has been amazing. I'll popcorn it over to Lise.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Lise. I'm a product designer on the platform design team. So I work on internal tools, mostly engineering tools. I got my start in design years ago. I majored in graphic design at Northeastern, and I got into that major because I was a yearbook nerd in high school. And then from there, I moved across the country to get my foot in the door in tech at a small startup, where I was the sole designer. And from there, I moved into fintech for about 5 years, also at a Starbucks or a startup, Starbucks. And from there, I got kind of burnt out and then switched into freelancing for a year and found myself contracting at Pinterest, and then finally converted to full-time at Pinterest. And that's how I had my winding journey. And finally, I'll popcorn it over to Molly.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly. I'm a content designer at Pinterest, and I always wanted to be a writer ever since I was little. And I think when I graduated college, I tried freelancing while working, at video stores for a while and just couldn't sustain it. So I did what English majors often do, which is I became a high school and a 5th grade English teacher. And so I taught for many years, which actually, if any of you all are teachers out there, it really helps you as a designer and a collaborator, giving creative feedback and making things simple, much more than you think it would. Like, I feel like my teaching stuff impacts me every day on the job. And then I started working in ed tech after that, editing online courses and textbooks. And then Pinterest was my first job on a formal design team. And I've been here for about 4 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Love to hear all the diverse backgrounds, and a lot of our buddies also have similar backgrounds. So yeah, feel free to share in the chat. Really exciting. And so we're going to hop into some of the questions. We have a lot of great questions and limited time. So we're going to hop right into it. And so sometimes, like you in school and when you're trying to hunt for a job, you're always trying to learn a lot, like learning technical skills, improving your interviewing skills. But when you get on a job, it's always like you either, especially in tech, and when things are always changing. And the question is, what continued education opportunities did you take advantage of to grow your breadth of knowledge as a designer, researcher, and content designer? And I'll go with Amy.
Yeah, I love this question because I'm a big proponent of just continuous education and just embracing a student mentality at whatever stage in your career you're at. So for me personally, that means staying up to date on just like the latest tech and design news, design trends. I mean, I'm, personally subscribe to tons of newsletters. I go on inspiration sites just to kind of immerse myself in just what's out there. And that kind of gets like the creative juices flowing. And I freelance as well on the side. So yeah, like outside of working hours, I freelance for a small startup that I'm a sole designer in. So that just flexes a different skill set than, you get on an organizational level. So kind of having that balance. and as well as traditional courses. I mean, traditional meaning online courses. There's just so many resources for designers today, I feel like. Classes like boot camps, small short courses, live, pre-recorded. So I have a few that I, try to chip away at whenever I have some extra time. And lately, actually, this is like a nice anecdotal fact. I've been pleasantly surprised that you can find people to pair on with this kind of stuff. So recently, a content designer actually joined my team, and he's curious about product design and I'm curious about content design. So we're going to work together like once a month and do little design jams. And both of us are going to kind of like practice each other's craft and learn from each other. So collaboration to get you there, I would highly recommend as well.
Awesome. Love all the diverse methods you mentioned, like newsletters, all the way to like even finding people on your teammates. And for the sake of time, we're going to feel free, anyone can just like jump in and answer as well. I don't want to have to like interject each time because I know we have a lot of questions, and honestly, this is our first time hosting 7 people on the panel, so I'm a bit nervous, but that is okay. We're gonna do this. So yeah, I'll go next on my screen, which is Hannah.
Grace, you're doing a good job. I think we were all so eager to talk about this opportunity that's why there's 7 of us from Pinterest. I would say for me, what I've enjoyed, like kind of in terms of conventional learning, we have a really cool group of people that work at Pinterest that really like guide you to think outside the box. And I think a good example of what we've done in the past is go to a movie together. We all went and saw The Revenant and got some inspo from the actual cinematography from that. There's a fantastic designer on there that kind of challenges us to go, and he talked about going to talk to the SF Ballet group to get more inspo based on how they approach their creative process. So I think that there's a lot of inspiration that you can find outside of the design world. I would challenge you to not just look within design. I look at art pieces, I look at what chefs are doing, and I think that helps me find a little bit more creativity that goes beyond the UI UX scope of things. And it helps me think a little bit more outside of the box of when we try to approach different projects. Also continued learning, similar to what Amy said, just there's so many resources out there, but if you can find a couple designers that you really like, or even just creative people in general, follow them and see if you can kind of mimic them in the sense that imitation is the best form of flattery. So, if you love Anthony Bourdain, see if you can try to cook a couple of his dishes. And I think that to me draws more inspiration than not necessarily just always looking at your computer and looking at the pixels and how you can move them from one way or another. And so that's how I like to look at ways to learn. Should I popcorn to someone? Is there anyone else who's intrigued by wanting to respond to this?
Yeah, I think I have something very similar. For me, I learned taking improv classes and comedy classes. I'm not a speaker by nature. I used to be really, really shy. So I took advantage of we had some funding to take those classes, and it really just helped me like come out of my shell and not take myself so seriously.
I just wanted to add to something that Amy was saying. I find freelancing incredibly helpful, especially if it's just like switching part of my brains. And especially as a content designer, you can get really thinking in your brand's voice and about what is right for your brand. I'm sure it's the same for visual design. So being able to switch and have different experiences is really important in like being well-rounded. And then another thing that I find useful is, and lucrative if you so choose, is doing a lot of like user interviewing and product testing and signing up for an account on user interview sites. I feel like it's like being in a design crit for another company, just like really analyzing like the holes in different products flows and the onboarding, and it helps my product thinking. So I would definitely, if you don't have accounts on user testing or ways to be in, feedback sessions for other products and experiences, getting on that too.
Awesome. I love how y'all mentioned different ways to train like different parts of your brain, like being creative, but also learning about different skills through a really collaborative process too. I'm just going down the list to see who everyone marked. Oh yeah, Ellen, did you also want to add to this as well?
Another thing I found really helpful when I'm first starting out career is leaning on my friends who have more experience, and give yourself the community to be able to geek out, talk about like little design things or talk about design trends and learn from your friends. So that's like a built-in network that you have to like, don't be afraid of like leveraging them.
Yeah, definitely. I want to add on to Ellen's point too, because that's how I got learned a lot from other folks when I was starting out. And my first job, I was a solo designer, so I didn't have like colleagues or necessarily like friends in the design community. So plugging into design groups or going to events and networking, just like putting myself out there. I met other designers, and then like from there, maybe some of those became friends. And then from there, like go to coffee chats and just like casual coffee chats and like learn from each other. And sometimes I would do working sessions together as well to learn. Plus one to your connections.
Yeah, it's always like a lot of people, like sometimes like a lot of people like actually want to collaborate, but people are like too scared to, and everyone feels scared to. It feels like no one does, but it just takes you or anyone to start initiating conversation. And usually people are super friendly and super down to share their experiences as well. We're going to segue into our next question, which is, what are your favorite moments at Pinterest working as a designer, researcher, content designer? Do you have any favorite projects and why that you're allowed to share? And we're going to go with John.
Just unmute me. So it will come as no surprise to you guys that I love research, being a researcher. But at Pinterest, we do get the opportunity to interview SMBs or small to medium businesses. So their stories are fascinating. And there's this part of the process in which you get to work with designers and your writers, and you use your sticky notes to affinitize the insights. And I love this. I love seeing the insights that folks draw from those interviews. And while I can't reveal the features that we've built from a recent study, I'll just say that it's really rewarding to unlock those insights. So really enjoy that collaboration.
Awesome. Yeah, you always, I guess the common thing is like, just talk to people, you'll end up learning something, and people usually love talking about themselves. So it's a great way to learn new things and also make connections as well. And so we're going to go with Hannah next.
I would say I'm not entirely sure if I can share some of my favorite projects, but that aren't launched to 100%. But I would say some of my favorite moments actually are coffee chats or being able to do a working jam session. We have found creative ways to do it while we've been working from home, but one of the things I love is when you see fellow designers, fellow product researchers and content designers all sitting at a table, and we kind of just start jamming on things. And similar to what John said, people somehow find pen and paper, and we all start doodling and scribbling our thoughts and our ideas around what we think the problem could be or what the solution we want it to be. But I think that overall, like, those moments are super organic. They're not as forced, and I really like that. And I feel like ultimately we end up having a really cool idea that comes out of it. I think another really favorite moment of mine, and I'll brag about the researchers, is being able to watch our users actually test out our products. And we have the unique opportunity to be able to do that, thanks to two of our representatives here, to be able to really say, hey, we built this. Maybe we actually now want to understand how users take advantage of it. And we learn a lot through that. And I've had a ton of insights that have felt justified and things that I haven't learned. And I think that we have a very unique opportunity to be able to test it with our users before we ship something out, which I've really appreciated as well. I'm going to pass it to, or Grace, did you want to pass it to someone, or do you want me to popcorn?
Yeah, I'm just popcorn to the people on the sheet, but yeah, either way works. I guess I'll popcorn it to Amy.
Yeah, honestly, similar to what Hannah said, for me, the best part or my favorite part of the job is really collaborating with so many talented people. And I think that that's a major strength that Pinterest has, is that cross-functional team collaboration. So being able to partner with research and content designers and you're all working together, if that's, a brainstorm, a workshop, a jam session, like Hannah said, even virtually, just coming together to solve the problem at hand. And Pinterest, it's very refreshing and encouraging that at Pinterest, like we really, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it really is users first above all else. And you feel that, even up to the leadership level, kind of, that's one thing that everyone is aligned on, is just finding the best solutions to, make people happy and safe on, in the positive corner of the internet. So yeah, feel very lucky to be part of that and to be able to work towards that common goal.
Awesome. You always learn something new when user testing. Sometimes like you end up revealing something that you ended up missing. Yeah, we go with Molly next.
Sure. So my favorite project actually came from a negative user experience. We were finding that when people were typing phrases related to self-harm and depression into Pinterest, we were like recommending them related results. And so I was part of this team that formed to pair with researchers from Stanford and figure out the best scenario of what to do. A lot of other platforms just provide a suicide helpline number, but we wanted to take a step further. So just working on designing from the ground up an experience of emotional support exercises so that, unlike anything else at Pinterest, so that people could stop where they are and do, guided activities or thought exercises to help their depression or what they were struggling with. And it went through everything. Like I got to research, I got to help co-design and build the experience from scratch. I helped to find a coworker really scrappily with the most soothing voice and go into a recording studio and record voiceovers, follow the exercises. It was featured in the New York Times as one of the best tech things of the year, which as like a New Yorker and a nerd was like the most rewarding thing that I could ever imagine. But just knowing that if someone really needed support in the moment, that like they were able to get it from Pinterest, it was really, really amazing. And I find trust and safety projects really rewarding generally. So, just not ignoring the issue and passing it off to someone else, but thinking about what we can do in the moment. And I actually wrote Kim's got it. There's actually a really great piece about also working with the designer and researching and thinking of like the most soothing visuals and how they could pair with the words to just create the most soothing experience possible. So you should check out the article. It's my favorite thing I've ever worked on. It's gonna be hard to beat it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And how you got, go ahead.
And just like, it's rare that content designers get to lead something. Like I feel like often it's like being tagged in later in the game. So I think it was really unique and special to work on something from the ground up where content and the words were the center of it. So I look forward, content designers, for the rare gems in your career that come up like that, where you get to steer, because it's really amazing.
Yeah, that's so great how you're able to make such a positive impact, and just definitely opening that link so I can read it later as well. And also I know earlier in the chat it was shared the Pinterest design career page. So y'all welcome to check that out as well. Plug in for y'all. Yeah, we're gonna go to our next question. I guess this is also a common thing I've seen in design buddies as well. And the question is, how can I train myself to be more confident at my job and also at speaking up about my ideas, even when I disagree? I feel like I have thousands of creative ideas, but have a big trouble addressing them with confidence. And I'm going to pause here, and anyone who's interested can jump in first. Otherwise, I'll nominate some of our buddies.
I can start. This is definitely something I also struggled with last year, and Pinterest actually offer coaching, free coaching sessions from Braverly, and that's one issue that I work with them. And what we worked on is think about the positive things about like what do you bring to the table, and like what is like the unique point of view that only you can provide. So going to any meetings and have that in mind, then like you wouldn't be thinking about, oh, my opinion worth less than other people, or like other people's opinion matter more. And again, like as like a designer, use of superpower storytelling, like I find that really helpful for me to put all the ideas down on the paper and then organize it in the way that's digestible for my cross-functional partners. So I think these are two big advice I would give for any designers.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how you emphasize storytelling. It's such an important skill in design as well. Would anyone else like to go next?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I would say, even starting out as a designer, I had a bit of imposter syndrome, to be quite frank with all of you. I had transitioned from being a product specialist at Pinterest to actually become a designer. So part of me was thinking, I haven't had the formal education as a designer. Much of my fellow designers were very intense and very awesome in the sense that they were just phenomenal human beings, but also really creative people. And I think I was just in my head all the time. And I had a really good mentor who just kind of sat me down and said, Hannah, like, it's not about you. We're all working towards the same project, and we're working towards fixing the same problems. Think about that. Make sure you come in with strong opinions, loosely held. But at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same problem. And I think that that really helped me shift my mindset into thinking, okay, I've got this. I 100% know what I'm doing, how I'm doing this. And if I don't, I can have a whole group of support people to actually talk to and ask questions and try to get more evidence to back a lot of what I was thinking was right or the right solution. And I think just continuing to work on that, like continuing to put yourself out there and be super vulnerable. It's hard. It's really hard. And crits sometimes really suck. We all know that, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end, because ultimately at the end of the day, we all are still working towards trying to make sure that this product is the best that it can be. And sometimes giving a little bit less like heart and soul into something is okay, because then in my mind, I think it helped me reconfigure how I was thinking, that it wasn't about me. It's about the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, I love that. And just thinking about the problem, like feedback is also not personal, and just thinking about the problem and removing yourself from it also helps a lot too. Would anyone else like to go next?
I think mine plus one to everything Ellen and Hannah said. I'm like, oh, I feel that so much. In my first job as a full-time researcher, I worked for Instagram, and I was so scared of everyone in Instagram because it was like this big, scary company. And I didn't know, I had imposter syndrome. I didn't know if my voice mattered until my mentor talked to me and saying, like, Michael, we hired you. Like, your voice does matter and your opinions matter. Just say them. And like, working with my manager, I was like, write 3 opinions before a meeting and at least say them. And I just started very slowly, just 1 opinion per meeting, then 2, then 3. And then now I'm not scared anymore. I had like this big fear of like just talking. And once, like just the first step, even one thing, just made it so much easier afterwards.
Yeah, just to relate to what Michael said, I think pre-writing really helps. I think a big thing that started giving me more confidence in meetings was just writing down what I was planning on saying ahead of time, or if I had an idea, because I feel like I was doing a lot of talking down or giving qualifiers for myself, like this isn't a great, like, I might be wrong, but, and writing things down ahead of time, even if it's just like a chat box in the bottom of a Zoom conversation and then erasing it afterwards, really helped me become more confident while giving ideas and speaking up for myself.
I know I shouldn't be talking twice, but Molly made me remember something that I did. Similar to what Michael said, was very earlier on, I kept saying sorry. So I kept inserting saying, sorry, X person, sorry. My manager at one point was like, Hannah, this is ridiculous. I hear sorry in your vocabulary more than I hear anything else. So he made me replace that word with Jello. So I had to consciously, whenever I was saying sorry, I said Jello, X, Jello. And then I realized how ridiculous I sounded by saying sorry all the time, that I ultimately trained myself to stop saying that word. And it worked really well. So I think that's also another good opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. I think, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I'm here. Yeah. Like some common things that I'm hearing as well is just how impactful a good mentor or manager can be to kind of, like build you up and help you grow in that way. So kind of adjacent to like the theme of this talk in general, but I would definitely recommend that that's something that people also pay attention to, like in their job search, in their career. You're not only choosing a product, a company to be aligned with, but also a team, and primarily your manager, who, should be as amazing as everyone's seemed to be, right? To advocate for you and lift you up and build you to be that, more confident designer. So I love that. Yeah. A lot of us have had that.
I want to chime in. I see some comments in the chat about, what great managers and mentors we have. And like, sometimes the reality is we don't have that too, and some experiences. And one thing I want to share is it's inherent in the question that like, how can I train myself to be more confident? And I think it really does come with practice, like just practicing like the storytelling. I'm just echoing what everyone has said too, like the storytelling and like coming with the rationale or like, the story behind your decisions and ideas, like jotting that down ahead of time, like all of those little things definitely help. Like I just saw someone said, fake it till you make it, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all your points here. And I guess like what kind of helped me a lot is just thinking about what other people will say. Like, for example, like engineering, they'll ask about like use cases, product will ask about like, or engineering, like what, like edge cases, like what happens if the user like does X amount of things or takes the product to the max and all the use cases and stuff. So just thinking about like who you're talking with and what questions they could ask and preparing them ahead of time also personally helped me as well. And yeah, so we're at 34. So I'm gonna like kind of hop between different categories of questions as well. And so we're gonna segue into this question as how should we expect to grow as a designer, researcher, or content designer at a company with less mature UX? And what can we do to grow as a sole designer on a project? Anyone can jump in first. If not, I nominate Michael.
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. I first, when I was a UX designer, how I tried to up-level my work was what else can I do and what else should I learn? So first it was just designing, but what is more to designing? I started thinking of introducing research to my team. I was working in a startup where we didn't have a dedicated qual researcher, then started connecting what is product doing and how can design and product be combined? So, and then lastly, I started learning more people skills. So how I learned is not only my design skills, but what are additional skills that can I add to my design portfolio? And that helped me branch out as I was going through my career.
The company that I worked at before Pinterest was an ed tech company that had very like immature, unsophisticated UX. And I think the way that I pushed myself to grow there was mostly just by mentoring others. Like design was limited and changes in the company were limited, but you can really have as much of yourself to give and make more value through human connections and just really helping people who come in and any contractors or freelancers that you have. Relationship building can be a way that you can really grow as a designer and thinker.
Yeah, I would also just branch off of that and say, recruit help and support wherever you can get it. If that's from your peers, some extra design reviews or crits, maybe you're still in design school or you took a boot camp and you have anyone in your network that can look over something and give you a second opinion, or reach out to mentors or, within communities such as design buddies. There are just so many people at your disposal who would, are willing and eager to help partake in a usability test. I actually just recruited a usability test participant from Design Buddies a week ago, for the early stage startup where I am a sole designer. Like we don't, so it's out there. So wherever you can get it to supplement that growth and learning, definitely seek it out.
Also, I guess the common theme is, oh, go ahead.
Sure. Sorry to cut you off, Grace. I was going to share like a little anecdote because I got started off in my career working as a sole designer at a small startup where the UX and design was very, not mature. But so one thing that I didn't appreciate at the time was because I was a sole designer, there were like all these other things that I learned on the job that I didn't realize I was going to learn. So in addition to just like having a lot more breadth of like different design areas, so like not just I like visual design and whatever. I worked on like branding and even like interior design in the office. There was like a lot to cover, but also I learned about the business side too. And so like early on in my career, I didn't think, I didn't know the value of like understanding, balancing like user-centric goals with the business goals too. And that was like something I really appreciate learning today. And I think being the sole designer can sometimes be scary, and it might feel like you're alone or like you're always educating others about what design is and the process. But all of that is super, super valuable. I would also, plus one, like looking for external growth opportunities too, like we talked about earlier. Like Amy said, plugging into design communities, or maybe ask your company if there's budget for education or growth opportunities like events and such. But yeah, I think like you just inherently learn a lot and grow a lot when you are the sole designer.
That's awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Hannah, I saw you mark your name down. Did you also want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the way that I was viewing this question as a less mature UX, it also depends on what team you're on. In my mind, I think there's a constant tug of war of this reactive and proactive design. And so when you are working with a team and you're seen as kind of almost as a service, a lot of what you have to do is churn out these projects, churn out these ideas pretty fast. And it's hard for you as a sole designer to take a breath and take a step back. And so there, unfortunately, there might be some times where you are going to be super reactive with a lot of design projects that you're working on. But similar to what my fellow panelists have said, is once you start to build those relationships with your cross-functional partners, maybe you can start intertwining a larger story. And part of that is starting to weave out like, okay, this project that I'm designing for you correlates with this project over here. And this is how like these all kind of are intertwined with one another. And in that way, I think there's this shift that can happen where you can almost become more proactive by proving that you can churn out these projects faster, but then taking a step back and saying, hey, overall, this is what the larger story is. And I'm seeing some fragmented parts that we're doing here. How do we bring it all back together and make sure that we have a very solid foundation in order to understand this is what the design story is for our product or for our company or what we want to talk about. And I think that is going to be hard as a sole designer. So if you can get as many advocates or people who also are really passionate about that story that we're trying to tell, I think that will help. But I do definitely think that at times you're going to have to be super reactive, but you really want to get to a point where you can get proactive as well. And you can lean on other designers, on other people who are passionate about that story to be able to help you get there in order to look at the larger picture.
Thanks for sharing. Love focusing on common goals and looking at the long-term picture, a large picture of everyone too. And I'm going to kind of combine two questions I see. One is in the chat, one is from submitted. The question from the chat is, what's the best way for designers to build a following / community around themselves? And this also touches on kind of like, how do you like leverage social media for that? And like a lot of, I guess like any like personal branding tips after you land your first job as a designer or trying to get a job as well. Any tips that y'all like to share about personal branding or building a community around yourself?
I can share just, some very punchy advice I heard early on. It wasn't so much about personal branding, but it translates super well, obviously. Is that let people know you exist. I had a mentor say this when, I was just coming out of my boot camp, like looking for opportunities, or this is the advice like he gives to any, budding designer is you need to put your work out there, right? So not just, applying to jobs, you're just like a person out in the wild, but share your work, however is most authentic to you. So I don't think that, creating a branded Instagram account or starting a YouTube channel makes sense for everyone, but it does make sense if that is how, if that aligns with you and your values and how you communicate yourself naturally. So I would say don't force it. Whatever channels make sense to you, are organic, perhaps you're already using in a similar way, just extend that and start giving your design opinions, maybe share some work here or there, or, share your design journey in public, wherever you're at, however you feel comfortable doing that. That's again, authentically you and not trying to mirror anyone else's approach. And I think that's how you can create or build a brand organically without forcing it.
Awesome, Vicky. It's like do things, tell people, and do things loud. Yeah. And Hannah, I saw you, Mark. Did you also want to add anything to this as well?
I actually think I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm way more of an introvert, and I'm not sure if I'm someone who actually likes to put my work out there or feels necessarily as if I should do that. Hilariously enough, I think I met Lise at a fellow design event, and that's how we got to know one another. And I think for me, it's try to put yourself out there in communities that you feel strongly about. So I was in like a women who design and drink wine event that I went to, and I drank more wine probably than I met other fellow designers, but it was still a really good time. And then just making sure that when you do introduce yourself, be very honest about where you are in your design journey. For me, when I first started going out, I think at first I was like, hey, I'm a very junior designer. I don't even know if I could call myself a designer, but I would like your opinions on how you got here and where you could ultimately end up going. Here's my portfolio. It's super, it's super rough, but it's great to get opinions and feedback no matter what from anyone. And again, I think the whole thing is try to be as vulnerable as possible and put yourself out there. It's going to suck sometimes, but it's also going to really rock. But once you really do go to some of these events, I think it helped me start to build my brand and who I was and how I was talking about myself. And you get to meet some great people. And Lise is one of them for me.
That's awesome. Also, like what Lisa said in the chat, like, is your elevator pitch? What do you provide and care about as a designer and researcher? So I love that. Awesome. Really quick, Elias said in the chat, where'd you find events? Design Buddies has a lot of events. You can also find them in our events channel. But yeah, we're gonna segue into more kind of on the job working cross-functionally, because I know y'all talked about working with your cross-functional partners, one of them being engineering. And so the question is, when devs think design is too much effort for them, how do you persuade them? Anyone can go first. If not, I nominate John.
Okey doke. So, I think I'm on the side of this from the research point of view, but I would say put bias to one side and be willing to seek the truth, even if you could be wrong. And that opens up humility in the conversation as you exchange and you learn things that you perhaps didn't know. What I would share is every eng that I've met wants to show impact in terms of moving product metrics. So there's three things that you could do to support that. So one is partner with your research and product and try to get alignment on what success looks like. And then, so for example, they might talk about behavioral metrics like data science point of view. And you could take something like customer satisfaction ratings and help them understand how that aligns to moving those metrics. So that would be one. Two, I would say sometimes eng cares, but they don't have enough time in their schedule. So if you work with technical product managers, you can say, hey, we have to create this buffer time so that we can kind of improve like fit and finish. And when you have that designated time, it makes your life so much easier. And then that last piece is around, if you want to elevate design thinking in the org, maybe take something like hackathons or something where you can reward like innovation and celebrate that. And then that will help everyone be kind of freer about moving in that way and promoting design thinking, if that helps.
I want to add on to what John said. I feel like he covered almost everything. But the one thing that what I've been doing is what can I do to avoid that point from happening? And one thing that my PM suggests is to do a design weekly, show different type of work, show short-term work, show long-term work, and then illustrate to the team like what impact each work is driving. And then if it really takes a really long time for them to build, get that feedback early and then adjust the design. So like you're not waiting till the handoff time and then just to find out, oh, we actually really can't build this. So like what John said, like have the humility to listen to the other side and then have more opportunity for that conversation to happen, then naturally you'll arrive at this disagreement moment a lot less.
I think
Yeah. Ooh. Sorry, Hannah, you want to go for it?
you can go, Lise.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think, yeah, John and Ellen covered a lot too. Like upfront alignment, that is super key. And like sharing your work early and often. Just like if you think something is your design work is going to take like X amount of time, like make sure you plan for intermittent reviews with those cross-functional partners, like your engineers or PM, whoever, to get feedback. And also, yeah, coming with data, of course, like whether that's qualitative or quantitative data to support your case, like that's one way you can persuade. I also want to give a plug for leveraging design systems. Like, so this may not be something that you have at your job, but there are a lot of like open sourced out of the box design solutions, and they're really great because they help establish a shared language between design and engineering. So like a good design system will have a design component, but also a component that's one-to-one in code. And if you can use that, then that speeds up the time and effort. But I would say like sometimes, of course, you can't use the design system and you need a custom design. And if that's a requirement for you, then, understand where the developer is coming from, like sit with them to understand like, what is the technical challenge? Why does it take a lot of time and effort? Like try to reach some middle ground. You won't always get your ideal design implemented. So yeah, it's a working relationship.
I think to add on to both, to what all of the panelists have said, I think it's show them the rocket ship, present the skateboard, strive for the car. So you ultimately are showing them what you think the ideal is, right? And then you get to the skateboard and this is your V1.1 and you're saying, hey, I'm going to get a handshake from you that you're going to build this, and then we're going to continue to iterate on this. And it's nice in UI UX design currently to get to the car, and then the car can ultimately, we add some rocket thrusters, I guess it becomes a rocket ship. But ultimately, I think what's kind of nice there is they see what the final product is, they see what we're striving towards. But if technically we can't get there just yet, then we start working our way backwards, and we start looking at what is the skateboard, what is the car, and then what can we do to actually make it be a rocket ship. And to Lise and Ellen's point, I think what's really nice is that if you show your work early and often, you almost challenge them to poke holes at your design, but you're also challenging them to engage in the design process. And I think that ultimately becomes a trained thing within the team to be able to have an opinion about how they feel about the design, and that makes them more invested in wanting to work with you to find the right solution.
Yeah, I love everything that y'all share your work early and often, and try to discuss like design decisions along the way as well. Amy, did you also want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone, really hit the nail on the head there. I think, above all else, again, a common thread I'm hearing is just open and constant communication loops, right? So just, laying it all out on the table, ego aside, and being like, okay, like this is where we're at. Where can we, compromise? Because it's always a give and take, right? You might not be able to like ship the rocket ship, like what, and to Hannah's metaphor, right away, but it's like, oh, okay, given the constraints, then could we maybe do something like this and, scale it down a bit and just offer a spectrum of different iterations and possibilities of what could be, the minimum viable product that you ship versus where we ideally would want to be. And I find that just providing that visibility and being very open to that spectrum, anywhere within that spectrum up front, kind of lessens the blow if, they get a little bit scared right away, like, oh, that, that's kind of a big ask. Actually, maybe not so much, because we can think about this, and it opens the door to collaboration and all that good stuff. So yeah, basically reiterating what everyone said, chat with your stakeholders.
Yeah, I love that. We're going to do a quick lightning round of questions, so feel free to keep your answers short, because we still have a kind of 3 questions to go through that y'all submitted. And also, I just wanted to mention how this event is more towards like designers who are working like at the internship or full time. So we won't be discussing as much as how you want how to get a job basically for the focus of this panel. And so we're going to jump into our next question, which is more also collaborating cross-functionally, is how do you collaborate with design, research, and content on the job? Like maybe an example is like a product you took end to end and how each played a role along the way. And anyone can go first. I nominate Molly.
How do I collaborate with design and research? I mean, to me, it's just part of my job. Sorry, my dog is being a little aggressive, but I think from a content design perspective that so much of collaboration is making sure to be in the conversation early and reminding people that collaboration is not just like later on in the handoff, putting a new coding of words on it. It's like helping out during the ideation phase. For me, a lot of it was getting good at Figma and like mocking things up in wireframing, designing things side by side. So to me, collaboration with research and design is regular ongoing conversations really early in the process are more important and more rewarding than conversations towards the end.
For me, it's very similar to Molly. It's very early conversation as soon as possible. Connecting research, let's say if I'm running research in Brazil, bring the design and writers with me in the market so that we can see users live as they're reacting to our products.
One thing to add is know what your goal is when you're collaborating with other people and state that goal early in the meeting. Like, so if I'm come to John for UX research advice, I need to be very explicit. This is what I'm asking for. Otherwise, he's gonna react to anything I'm saying, and then we'll end up getting nowhere at the end of the conversation. So setting the goal and the purpose, and then be very clear, starting all at the same foot.
I think one thing to add on to that is researchers often use a research plan, and that's kind of a lightning rod for how you guys will be collaborating. And to Ellen's point, you'll say, you know, here's the goals, here's the outcomes I'm aiming for, here's the timeline. And that's how you can start pulling in other partners. We've used this a lot in out-of-box experience and different products. And that really is the kind of project that you absolutely need your writers and designers and research all working tightly on, so you can iterate together.
This is also kind of a more of a tactical approach, but I'll say maybe coming in when I wasn't in design and I was on customer service, I made sure I was in all the weekly meetings with all the teams that I was working with. And so my face was there and they saw me every single week. And so when they were thinking about a customer perspective, they're like, oh, Hannah, what do you think? And I think by inserting myself that way and by asking questions and being present, I think really did help. That allowed them to say, okay, here's someone who wants to be at the table, who wants to give her input, and she hear her thoughts earlier on so that they can be implemented with it whenever we decide to start a project or something like that.
Awesome. Love all the advice y'all gave. We're gonna kind of segue into our last few questions here today and also share the takeaway slide that Amy prepared for us too. I guess our last question, and I'm gonna kind of try to tie both together. It's the kind of two questions I love asking towards the end of each panel is, what are your career goals and what are you doing right now to get there? And any last pieces of advice for our buddies here today? And anyone can jump in to start.
I guess I can start. I can jump. So my career goal is to become a manager or people manager. I was a teacher teaching UX design and UX research in a university for a little bit. And so to get there, actually my manager is John. So I asked my manager if he can give me a contractor so that I can practice managing. I joined the APD community to be a mentor to just practice mentoring, and I connect to like past students that I've had to also mentor them so that I can build that manager skill set as I'm trying to progress for my next role.
Love that. Oh, go ahead, Molly.
Oh, I've kind of met and exceeded my career goals. You know, I thought I was going to be like a charter school teacher forever. So I'm doing pretty good. And I think it's interesting for our field that our careers are kind of developing and changing. Like apps didn't exist when I was in college and now they do. I think what I would like as my career goal is to just be like a senior level IC and to not go into managing others or and to just stay in a lane and get to really dive in deep and focus on that. And I think like in terms of getting there, and my advice is to just be honest about that. Like don't get pushed into a role that you're not really interested in just because it seems like it's moving forward or moving up. And to just, if you are a lone wolf, just follow that path.
So just to add on to Molly's thoughts, so I do find myself in that management position, but that isn't kind of like the be all and end all for me. For me, I just want to have impact, and sometimes that can be as an IC as well. So I would say, look at your environment and say, like, do I want to give up some of my IC impact to help others, or is this an environment where I have to reverse things? So I think for me, it's just to always feel like I'm making an impact in these different orgs at whatever level it is, and find interesting areas or problems to tackle.
I don't know if we have time. Mine's definitely more ambiguous because I agree with Molly. I kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm a product designer, woo. But to be honest, I think this is super ambiguous. I have a story to tell. I don't yet know how to frame it or what I'm going to tell and how I'm going to tell it. That's kind of my next goal is like, am I going to create a product? Am I going to create an animated movie? Am I going to do something of that sort? I don't know yet, but I think what I'm doing currently is helping me build those tools in order to do that.
Awesome. I know we're at time. Feel free to hop off if you have to go, but I wanted to give everyone else a chance to answer as well, and also have time for our group photos and share takeaway slides. So as I share my slide, feel free to jump in, any of our speakers as well, and then we'll do a group photo afterwards. Yeah, this is prepared by Amy and all of our buddies here at Pinterest. So I can share this in the email as well. You're welcome to screenshot this and use it for yourself as well. But yeah, any of our panelists want to add to this question as well, like what are your career goals and what are you doing to get there?
Yeah, I love this question. It's interesting because I'm quite early in my career, right? So like thinking of kind of like that long journey is like daunting, but also kind of exciting. So I definitely, at least at this stage, see myself as eventually, similar to Molly, like becoming, a senior IC role. I don't know if people management, it is somewhere I'll end up, something I'll end up pursuing, but really just doubling down and getting a lot better at my craft. So broadening just like my product understanding, product strategy, just having a hand in as much of the process as possible. Super curious about content design, for example. So just understanding the breadth of, product creation really from 0 to 1, that really excites me. Those ambiguous spaces and creating something out of thin air. And to that, absolutely where I'm at right now. And Pinterest, our team, everything we're doing is thankfully very aligned with that.
Awesome. Anyone else want to go next? And for our buddies, feel free to turn your camera if you want to be in our group photo as well. I'm going to give some room for any other panelists who want to answer this question too. As any of our buddies, feel free to turn your camera. Don't be shy. We're all really friendly. And if you don't want to turn your camera, you can also like react. But as we wait for everyone to turn their camera, is there any other panelists want to go next too?
Yeah, goal is such a loaded word. I mean, I recently was promoted and I realized I still wasn't happy and what was wrong with me. And then I realized like, oh, the goals keep getting further and further away. And like, I need to set goals that will make me happy. So instead of like chasing after, to set myself like, I'm definitely have to be a manager or become a director. Now I kind of refine my goal to be just work with people I can always learn from, and then always working on challenging problems and just make sure I'm growing every day. And then if mentor is like the next step, then let it be. But I will try to go more with the flow instead of like setting these really high goal for myself and then pressure myself to get there. And then once I get there, I'm not even happy about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Just do something new every day. That's what I strive to be as well. And congrats on your promotion too. Did anyone else want to go next?
I'll my like bottom line, well, I'm going to skip over my career goal and just like advice is practice patience. Building expertise and like getting to the next level and what you want next in your career takes time, and it's really easy at least I've been there, been in a seat of like feeling impatient or like, why isn't this happening now, like when is this promotion going to happen, et cetera. But it definitely takes time, so like remain curious and keep learning, keep connecting with others, and you're on the right track.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. What are your career goals?
Yeah, so I guess similar to what Molly was saying, I want to get deeper and more senior and like do more lead projects, like strategic projects in product design. And I also one day want to switch over to a career in probably still design, but in the health and wellness industry. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. But yeah, I'm gonna take a group photo. I'll count down 5 seconds. If you don't want to turn your camera, you can react and you'll be in a photo as well. Feel free to, oh yeah, I love your pets. Like bring pets, bring animals, bring anything you want. I have Fawful with me, it's my pet. Not really. But yeah, all right. You can react too if y'all want a countdown. So we'll do a static photo and a wait for Instagram story. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Smile. I'm gonna take multiple and choose the one where everybody looks the best in. Y'all know how it's like. All right, we're gonna do a wave for Instagram story. Ready? You can just like wave, dance, dab. We like to do this at Design Buddies. All right, ready, set, wave. Hello, buddies. Buddies, we just had a wonderful panel with our buddies over at Pinterest on So You're a Designer Now What? So make sure you check out the recording on our YouTube channel. Thank you, buddies, for coming. Awesome. Oh my God, Instagram changed the UI. Anyways, I just made sure to save that story. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming. I know we're a bit over time, so appreciate y'all. I'm gonna stop live streaming to YouTube, and for hosts, I'm gonna do a quick debrief. And thank you to our moderator, David, from our events team over at Design Buddies for dropping all the links in the chat. And yeah, make sure to connect with Pinterest Design. They have a pretty cool blog as well, and also Design Buddies and each other in the networking sheet. And yeah, have a nice day, evening, night, buddies. Thank y'all for coming.
Thanks, everyone.